My friend and colleague Bill Clark used to live in Provincetown, Massachusetts. If you've never been there, it's surrounded by beaches. And one evening when he was feeling quite sad, he went to take a walk along the water's edge. There was no one around until he saw a man in the distance who was yelling something. He could not hear what the man was saying at first. He could just see his silhouette against the night sky. He appeared to be cupping his hands around his mouth and yelling something up in the air. As Bill came closer, he could hear what the man was saying. He was yelling, "Blessings, blessings, blessings!" And Bill, who was feeling quite sad himself and being an aspiring seminarian at the time, was impressed by this man who came out to the ocean all alone and was not afraid to come right out and ask God for some blessings. He was thinking how most people, including himself, sit around waiting for God to bless them. Most of us are too shy to just come right out and yell at God and say, "Hello, here I am, I need some blessings." Bill stood there in awe, watching this man, thinking about all of this, when suddenly a little dog came running up and jumped on the man's foot. He said, "Oh, blessings, there you are." Now, Bill started laughing, too, at himself, but it made him think about what is the role, what is our role when it comes to acquiring life's blessings? You know, for the past month, we've been talking about grace. That was our theme in January, which I've been defining as unearned or unmerited blessings. I've explained how there's nothing we can do to plan for grace, nothing we can do to earn it, and nothing we can do to keep ourselves from receiving it. Now, this month, however, our theme is prayer and spiritual practices, which is the flip side, right? It's about how we can, what we can do, and how we can prepare ourselves to be blessed and to be a blessing. It's like the difference between when the Israelites crossed the Red Sea compared to when they crossed the River Jordan. In the book of Exodus, we find the story of Moses, how he stuck out his staff, and the Red Sea parted, and the Israelites walked to freedom. Now, the story of the crossing of the Red Sea is the quintessential example of grace. It's a story about a blessing bestowed on all the Israelites, no matter who they were or what they'd done. The complainers, doubters, the rebellious, the faithless, and the whiners, they were all blessed with a passage to freedom along with the faithful and the dutiful. That's grace. But when the Israelites came to the River Jordan 40 years later, when it was time to finally leave the wilderness and enter the promised land, this time they were required to do some things first. Then God parted the waters and gave them their blessing. In the story in the book of Joshua, chapter 13, we're told that the Lord led the Israelites to the Jordan River in the flood season when it was raging and overflowing its banks. Next, God told the Israelites to sanctify themselves. So they prepared themselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. And next, God said, "First you step into the water, and then I'll make a way for you to cross." Unlike the Red Sea, the Jordan only parts for wet feet. That's a scary proposition. To have to wade into a raging river first and have faith that a path will emerge. But we all have times in our lives that are like that Jordan River moment, when we have to first take a scary step without knowing for sure what will happen. It could be a new job or a new opportunity. In those moments, we need to have faith and courage and hope Because if we don't take that step, we might end up stuck wandering in the wilderness for the rest of our lives. But where do we find the courage and the poise that allows us to do what's right, even when it's scary, even when the outcome is uncertain? Because we never know when we'll find ourselves at the banks of the Jordan River on our own life's journey. So we need to prepare ourselves through spiritual practices so that when it matters, we're ready. Andrew Harvey, the Rumi scholar, he'll be with us again next month. He'll be here on March 5th, so mark your calendars, the first Sunday in March. He's going to be back. Last time he was here, he shared with us 4 different types of spiritual practices that he explained are necessary to live in a way that we're fully alive and fully awake. Now, you may have noticed that I've left space on the order of service for you to write these down, because I know that if I didn't, that you'd be coming out of the service afterward and emailing me all week asking me for the one of the 4 that you couldn't remember. So here they are. You might want to take out a pen. There's some pens in the pew backs if you need one. There will be a test. It's called life. First, there are cooling practices. These are practices that help us cool down when we become too angry or too anxious. They're calming, grounding, peaceful practices like meditation and breathing exercises, things like chanting and visualization and centering prayer. In order to be successful in all aspects of our lives, we need to be able to cool down our spirit when it becomes too inflamed with anger or anxiety. And that's why we each need to have some cooling practices. Now, the second kind are heating practices. These are for when we become too cool or too apathetic or too dispirited, and when we need to be re-inspired and re-motivated. Spiritual practices that are heating, they keep our hearts alive in disheartening times. Heating practices help stir our passion and compassion. They include such things as drumming and dancing, and music and kundalini yoga and poetry, and even contemporary praise music or music like we were just singing. That's a heating practice. Standing and clapping all together like that, it gets the heart pumping and the body moving. Third, our physical conditioning practices. These are practices that keep the body strong and flexible, like exercise and yoga or tai chi. We need our bodies to be able to handle the journey when things become stressful and the stakes are high. And fourth, the fourth kind of practices we could call shadow work. Everyone has a shadow side. We all have blind spots and areas where we hold and carry old wounds and traumas. These are at the root causes of things like impulse control and addiction and aggression and fear and other illicit or undermining behaviors. Shadow work includes intentional ways to find and face our shadow side. And it includes techniques to uncover our blind spots and to become accountable. Shadow work often requires the assistance of others, like a spiritual director or a therapist, or an accountability group, like a 12-step program, or certain kinds of men's and women's groups. But if we're not aware of and in control of our shadow, then it's likely that our shadow is in control of us. Now let's review. What are they? The first one is, right? The second one is, third one, and the fourth one is, all right, you get an A today.